The morning sun was shining bright over the sandy beach in Florida. It was one of those perfect summer days when the sky looked like a painting, all blue with fluffy white clouds floating by. The ocean waves were making that peaceful sound that makes everyone feel calm and happy. Officer Mike had been working at this beach for 12 years now. He knew every corner, every family that came here regularly, and every kid who loved building sandcastles near the water. Today was different, though. Today was special because it was the annual wish day for sick children, a day when kids who were fighting tough battles got to have fun at the beach. The beach was more crowded than usual. Families had spread their colorful blankets everywhere. Kids were running around with beach balls, parents were setting up umbrellas, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. The smell of sunscreen mixed with the salty ocean air, and you could hear laughter coming from every direction. What made this day extra special was that two famous wrestlers had come to visit. Cena, the guy everyone knows for being super, strong and kind to kids, was there. And so was The Rock, that big muscular guy who makes movies and always has a huge smile on his face. They had come to meet the children and make their day unforgettable. Officer Mike was walking his usual route along the beach when something caught his eye. Near the edge of the water, where the waves barely touched the sand, sat a little girl in a wheelchair. She looked to be about 8 years old, with curly brown hair and the biggest, most beautiful eyes he had ever seen. But what really got his attention was the look on her face. The little girl was watching all the other kids playing in the water. Her eyes followed every splash, every laugh, every moment of joy that was happening in the ocean. She had this expression that was hard to describe. It was like she was dreaming of something she thought she could never have. Her parents stood right behind her wheelchair. Her mom was a small woman with kind eyes, and you could tell she loved her daughter more than anything in the world. Her dad was tall and had gentle hands that he kept placing on his daughter's shoulders, like he was always making sure she was okay. They were both watching their little girl watch the other children, and you could see in their faces that mix of happiness and sadness that parents sometimes get. The mom would point to different things happening in the water and smile at her daughter. The dad would lean down and whisper something that would make the little girl giggle. They were trying so hard to make sure she felt included, even though she couldn't join the other kids in the ocean. Officer Mike had seen this before. He remembered his own daughter, who had faced similar challenges when she was younger. She had been born with some problems that made it hard for her to do things other kids could do easily. He remembered those days when she would sit and watch while other children played, and he remembered how much it broke his heart. The beach was alive with activity. Near the snack bar, Cena was signing autographs for a long line of excited kids. He was wearing a bright-colored shirt and had that famous smile that made everyone feel special. Every kid who met him walked away looking like they had just met a superhero. Not far away, The Rock was taking pictures with families. He was even bigger in person than he looked on TV, but he had this gentle way about him that made even the smallest kids feel comfortable. He would get down on their level, make funny faces for the camera, and tell jokes that had everyone laughing. The whole beach felt like a celebration. There were games happening everywhere: volleyball, frisbee, and kids building the most amazing sand sculptures you could imagine. The lifeguards were all smiling because everyone was having such a good time. Even the seagulls seemed to be in a good mood, flying around peacefully instead of trying to steal people's food. But Officer Mike couldn't stop thinking about that little girl by the water. Every time he looked over there, she was still in the same spot, still watching, still dreaming. Her parents had tried to move her wheelchair closer to the action, but the sand was too soft and the wheels kept getting stuck. He started walking in their direction, not really having a plan, just feeling like he needed to do something. As he got closer, he could hear the family talking quietly among themselves. The little girl was asking her parents if she could touch the water. "Just touch it," she said. She had never felt ocean water before, and she was curious about whether it felt different from the water in the bathtub at home. Her parents looked at each other with that look parents get when they want to give their child everything but don't know how to make it safe. The mom explained gently that the wheelchair couldn't go into the sand near the water, and that the waves might be too strong. The dad suggested they could bring her a bucket of ocean water, but the little girl shook her head. It wasn't the same, she said. She wanted to feel the waves touching her feet like the other kids. Officer Mike stopped walking and just watched for a moment. He saw how much this family loved each other. He saw how hard the parents were trying to find a way to make their daughter's wish come true. And he saw something else. He saw an opportunity to help. The beach patrol officer had helped hundreds of families over the years. He had rescued kids who had gone too far into the water, helped find lost toys, and even delivered a few babies when families couldn't get to the hospital in time. But this felt different. This wasn't about danger or emergencies. This was about making a dream come true. He thought about his own daughter and how different her life had become once people started helping her find ways to do the things she loved. He remembered the first time someone had shown her that having challenges didn't mean having limits. It just meant finding different ways to reach your goals. The waves were perfect that day, not too big, not too small. The water was warm and clear. The lifeguards were all experienced and watching carefully. If there was ever a perfect day for a little girl to experience the ocean for the first time, this was it. Officer Mike made his decision. He was going to help this little girl touch the ocean waves no matter what it took. He didn't know exactly how he was going to do it yet, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Sometimes, he thought, being a police officer meant more than just keeping people safe. Sometimes it meant helping dreams come true. He started walking toward the family, his mind already working on a plan. He didn't notice that Cena had finished with his autograph line and was now watching the scene unfold. He didn't see that the Rock had also stopped what he was doing and was paying attention to the little girl by the water. What was about to happen would change everyone's day in ways none of them could have imagined. Sometimes the most beautiful moments come from the simplest acts of kindness, and sometimes those acts of kindness look like something completely different from the outside. The stage was set for something magical to happen, and Officer Mike was about to make the first move. Officer Mike walked up to the family with a gentle smile on his face. He had been thinking about how to approach them for the last few minutes, and he decided to just be honest and direct. That's how he always handled things, with truth and kindness. "Good morning," he said to the parents. "I'm Officer Mike. I've been working this beach for many years, and I couldn't help but notice your beautiful daughter here." The mom looked a little nervous at first. Sometimes when police officers approach families, parents worry that something is wrong or that they're in trouble. But Officer Mike's warm smile and gentle voice quickly put them at ease. "Is everything okay?" the dad asked, instinctively moving a little closer to his daughter's wheelchair. "Everything is perfect," Officer Mike replied. "I was actually wondering if I could help with something. I noticed your little girl seems very interested in the ocean, and I have an idea that might make her day extra special." The little girl looked up at the tall police officer with curious eyes. She had never talked to a real police officer before, and she was both excited and a little shy. Officer Mike noticed this and knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Hi there," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Lucy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "That's a beautiful name, Lucy. I have a daughter too, and when she was your age, she loved the ocean just like you do. Would you like to feel what the ocean waves feel like on your feet?" Lucy's eyes grew wide with excitement, but she looked at her parents uncertainly. She had asked them the same question just minutes before, and they had explained why it might not be possible. Her mom, Anna, spoke up. "Officer, that's very kind of you to offer, but Lucy's wheelchair can't go in the sand, and we're worried about the waves being too strong for her." Officer Mike nodded understandingly. "I completely get your concerns, and they're very valid, but I've helped many families in similar situations over the years. If you trust me, I think I can safely help Lucy experience the ocean in a way that will be completely safe for her." The dad, Robert, looked skeptical. As any good parent would, he was protective of his daughter and worried about anything that might put her at risk. "What exactly did you have in mind?" he asked. "Well," Officer Mike explained, "the waves today are very gentle, and the water is shallow right at the edge. If Lucy is comfortable with it, I could carry her down to where the waves just barely touch the shore. I would hold her the entire time, making sure she's completely safe and secure." Lucy's face lit up like a Christmas tree. The idea of actually feeling the ocean waves sounded like the most amazing thing in the world to her. But her parents still looked worried. Anna bit her lip nervously. "I don't know. What if she gets scared? What if the waves are stronger than they look? What if—" "Mom," Lucy interrupted quietly, "I really want to try. Please." Officer Mike could see the internal struggle the parents were having. They wanted to give their daughter this experience, but their protective instincts were telling them to be careful. He had seen this exact same struggle with his own wife when their daughter had wanted to try new things. "I understand your hesitation," he said to the parents. "How about this? Why don't you both come with us? You can be right there the entire time. And if anyone feels uncomfortable at any point, we'll stop immediately." Meanwhile, other people on the beach were starting to notice the conversation happening near the water's edge. Some families had stopped their own activities to watch what was going on. A few teenagers with their phones out were casually recording everything, as teenagers tend to do these days. John Cena had finished signing autographs and was now watching the scene from about 50 feet away. Something about the police officer's body language and the way he was interacting with the family told him this was a positive situation, but he stayed alert just in case his help was needed. The Rock was also paying attention. He had incredible instincts when it came to reading people and situations, probably from all his years in wrestling and acting. He could tell the police officer meant well, but he also noticed that some of the other beachgoers were starting to look concerned. After a few more minutes of discussion, Lucy's parents finally agreed to let Officer Mike try his plan. They made him promise to be extremely careful, and they insisted on being right there in the water with them. "Okay, Lucy," Officer Mike said. "Are you ready for an adventure?" Lucy nodded eagerly, her whole face glowing with excitement. Officer Mike carefully lifted her from her wheelchair, making sure to support her properly and keep her comfortable. Lucy was lighter than he expected, and she felt as delicate as a butterfly in his strong arms. "How does that feel?" he asked her as he held her securely. "Good," Lucy giggled. "You're really strong." Anna and Robert walked alongside them as Officer Mike began moving toward the water. They were both nervous but trying to stay positive for their daughter's sake. Anna kept one hand on Lucy's arm, and Robert stayed close enough to help if needed. But here's where things started to look very different from the outside. To other people on the beach, what they saw was a police officer suddenly grabbing a disabled child from her wheelchair and carrying her toward the ocean. They couldn't hear the conversation that had happened. They couldn't see the parents' permission or the little girl's excitement. All they could see was what appeared to be a very concerning situation. "Hey!" someone shouted from behind them. "What are you doing?" A woman in a red swimsuit started walking quickly toward them, her face full of alarm. She had been playing volleyball with her friends when she noticed what she thought was a police officer taking a child against her will. Other people began to notice too. A man with a camera started recording more obviously, thinking he was about to capture something terrible on video. A group of teenagers stopped their frisbee game and began pointing and whispering to each other. "Stop!" another voice called out. This time it was an older gentleman who had been reading a book under an umbrella. He stood up and started walking toward them, clearly upset by what he thought he was seeing. Officer Mike heard the voices but didn't stop. He was focused on Lucy and her safety, and he could see the pure joy on her face as they got closer to the water. Lucy was pointing at the waves and giggling with excitement, completely unaware of the growing crowd behind them. Anna and Robert suddenly realized what was happening. They could see people pointing at them and looking angry or concerned. Anna's heart started beating faster as she realized how this must look to strangers. "Maybe we should explain to people what's happening," Robert suggested, but Officer Mike was already at the water's edge. The crowd was getting bigger now. More people were pulling out their phones, and the voices were getting louder and more urgent. Some people were genuinely concerned about what they thought was happening to a helpless child. Others were angry at what appeared to be an abuse of police power. "Someone call for help," a woman yelled. "This isn't right," a man shouted. John Cena and The Rock both started moving closer to the situation. They couldn't hear what people were saying over the sound of the waves in the distance, but they could see that a crowd was forming and people looked upset. The Rock security team noticed the commotion and started to approach, but The Rock held up his hand to signal them to wait. His instincts told him to observe first before acting. Officer Mike was now standing in the shallow water, still holding Lucy securely in his arms. The little girl was looking down at the waves lapping around the officer's feet, and her eyes were wide with wonder. "Are you ready, Lucy?" Officer Mike asked softly. "Yes," she whispered, almost breathless with excitement. But to the crowd watching from the beach, what they saw was a police officer standing in the ocean, holding a disabled child, and appearing to be about to do something terrible. The scene looked absolutely frightening from their perspective. People were shouting louder now. Someone was calling 911 on their phone. A few brave individuals were starting to walk into the water themselves, thinking they needed to rescue Lucy from what appeared to be a dangerous situation. Anna tried to wave to the crowd and shout that everything was okay, but her voice was lost in all the noise and confusion. Robert was torn between staying with his daughter and going back to explain to people what was really happening. The tension on the beach was reaching a breaking point. What had started as a simple act of kindness was now looking like something completely different to dozens of concerned strangers. Officer Mike was completely focused on Lucy and didn't realize how bad the situation looked from behind them. He was about to give this little girl the experience of a lifetime, but to everyone else watching, it appeared he was about to do something unthinkable. The stage was set for a massive misunderstanding that could change everything in just a few seconds. Officer Mike took one more step deeper into the shallow water, holding Lucy as gently as if she were made of glass. The warm ocean water was now up to his knees, and the small waves were creating the perfect conditions for what he had planned. "Okay, Lucy," he said in the softest voice. "I'm going to lower you down very slowly so your feet can touch the water. I'll be holding you the entire time, and your mom and dad are right here. If you get scared or want to stop, just tell me, okay?" Lucy nodded eagerly, her small hands gripping Officer Mike's uniform shirt. She had been dreaming of this moment for so long that she could hardly believe it was really happening. Very carefully, Officer Mike began to lower Lucy toward the water. Her parents, Anna and Robert, were standing right beside them in the shallow waves, their hands ready to help if needed. Anna was holding her breath, watching every second with a mixture of excitement and worry. The moment Lucy's toes touched the warm ocean water, something magical happened. Her face transformed completely. The biggest, most beautiful smile spread across her features and her eyes sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. "Oh my goodness," Lucy gasped, feeling the gentle waves washing over her feet. "It's so warm, and it tickles." She started giggling, and then the giggles turned into pure, joyful laughter that was so infectious and beautiful that even the seagulls seemed to stop and listen. It was the kind of laugh that comes from deep inside when something wonderful happens that you never thought was possible. Officer Mike continued to lower her gradually until she was sitting in the shallow water, with the gentle waves lapping around her waist. He kept his strong arms around her, making sure she felt completely safe and secure. "I'm in the ocean," Lucy shouted with delight, her voice carrying across the beach. "I'm really in the ocean. Mom, Dad, look at me." Anna started crying, but they were the happiest tears she had ever cried. Seeing her daughter experience this simple joy that most kids take for granted was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. Robert had to wipe his own eyes as he watched his little girl splash the water with her hands. "How does it feel, sweetheart?" Anna asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "It feels like magic," Lucy replied, moving her hands through the water and watching the ripples spread out around her. "It's different from the bathtub, it moves and dances." The waves were perfect that day. Not too big to be scary, but big enough for Lucy to feel their gentle power. Each time a small wave rolled in, it would lift her slightly, giving her the sensation of floating and movement that she had never experienced before. Officer Mike was smiling so wide that his face hurt. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. He remembered when his own daughter had first overcome one of her challenges, and the pure joy on her face had been exactly like what he was seeing now. But something else was happening too. The crowd on the beach, who just moments before had been shouting in anger and fear, was beginning to understand what was really going on. The woman in the red swimsuit, who had been the first to yell, stopped dead in her tracks when she heard Lucy's laughter. The sound was so pure and happy that it immediately changed everything she thought she had been seeing. "Wait," she said to the people around her. "Listen to that child laughing." The man who had been recording on his phone slowly lowered his device as he watched the scene more carefully. He could see the parents standing right there in the water, smiling and crying happy tears. He could see that the little girl was not in danger at all, but was having the time of her life. "Oh," said the older gentleman who had been reading under the umbrella. "I think I made a mistake." One by one, the people in the crowd began to realize that what they had thought was something terrible was actually something beautiful. The angry voices turned into whispers of understanding, and then into sounds of appreciation for what they were witnessing. A young mother with 2 small children put her hand to her heart. "Look," she whispered to her kids, "that police officer is helping that little girl experience the ocean for the first time." Her children, who had been confused by all the shouting, now watched with wide eyes as Lucy continued to laugh and play in the gentle waves. The teenagers who had been recording everything looked at each other with embarrassment. One of them, a girl with curly hair, started to put her phone away. "We should delete those videos," she said quietly. "This is private and beautiful." John Cena, who had been watching from a distance, felt his heart swell with emotion. He had met thousands of children over the years through his work with Wish Foundations, and he recognized this moment for what it truly was. Pure magic happening between a caring adult and a child who needed help reaching her dreams. The Rock was equally moved. His own experience as a father made him appreciate how much courage it had taken for Lucy's parents to trust a stranger with their precious daughter, and how much kindness it had taken for Officer Mike to see what this little girl needed. Back in the water, Lucy was discovering new things every second. She noticed how the sand felt different under the water, softer and more fluid. She watched tiny fish swimming around her legs and squealed with delight when they tickled her skin. "There are fish," she announced to everyone, pointing into the clear water. "Little tiny fish are swimming with me." Robert waded in deeper and knelt down beside his daughter. "What do you think, Lucy? Is it everything you hoped it would be?" "It's better," Lucy said, throwing her arms up and splashing water everywhere. "It's so much better than I dreamed." Officer Mike adjusted his hold on her so she could move around more freely while still being completely safe. "Would you like to try floating?" "On your back?" he asked. "I'll hold you the entire time." Lucy's eyes got even wider. "Can I really float?" "With help you absolutely can," Officer Mike assured her. Very slowly and carefully he helped Lucy lean back until she was floating on the surface of the gentle waves, his hands supporting her head and back. The sensation of floating seemed to amaze her even more than sitting in the water had. "I'm flying," she whispered in wonder, looking up at the blue sky and white clouds above her. "I'm flying in the ocean!" Anna and Robert stood on either side of their floating daughter, both of them crying happy tears and taking pictures with their phones to remember this perfect moment forever. The crowd on the beach had completely changed. Now, instead of anger and concern, there was a feeling of warmth and appreciation for what they were witnessing. Some people were crying happy tears just from watching. Others were smiling and talking quietly about how beautiful the moment was. Few families with their own children came closer to the water's edge, not to interfere but just to be part of this special moment. Kids were asking their parents why everyone had been upset before, and the parents were trying to explain how sometimes things look different from the outside than they really are. "That's why we should always try to understand before we judge," one dad told his son. The woman in the red swimsuit felt embarrassed about her earlier reaction. She wanted to apologize, but she didn't want to interrupt the family's special moment. Instead, she decided to wait until later to approach them. Officer Mike noticed that Lucy was getting a little tired from all the excitement. "How are you feeling, Lucy? Would you like to try sitting up again, or are you ready to take a little break?" "Can I sit up and splash some more?" Lucy asked. "I want to make the biggest splash ever," Officer Mike helped her back into a sitting position, and Lucy immediately started creating the biggest splashes she could manage. Water flew everywhere, soaking Officer Mike even more than he already was. But he didn't care one bit. His uniform would dry, but this moment would last forever. The Rock leaned over to John Cena and whispered, "That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen." John Cena nodded, wiping his own eyes. "Makes you remember why we do what we do. For kids, doesn't it?" They both stood there quietly, respecting the family's moment but feeling grateful to witness such pure joy and kindness. After about 20 more minutes of playing in the gentle waves, Lucy started to look a little sleepy. The excitement and new sensations had been wonderful, but they had also been tiring for her small body. "I think our ocean princess might be getting tired," Anna said gently. Lucy yawned, but she didn't want the magic to end. "Can we stay just a little longer, please?" "Of course we can," Officer Mike said. "But maybe we can just float quietly for a few minutes and listen to the sound of the waves." And that's exactly what they did. Lucy floated peacefully in Officer Mike's gentle hold, listening to the rhythm of the ocean and feeling more content and happy than she had ever felt in her whole life. The beach around them had become peaceful, too. People were going back to their own activities, but there was a different feeling in the air now, a feeling of having witnessed something truly special. As Lucy floated peacefully in the gentle waves, something amazing was about to happen that would make this perfect day even more incredible. John Cena and The Rock had been watching from a distance, both deeply moved by what they had witnessed. They looked at each other and seemed to have the same thought at exactly the same time. "Should we?" The Rock asked quietly, nodding toward the family in the water. John Cena smiled. "I think that little girl deserves to meet her heroes on the most magical day of her life." They started walking toward the water, but they were careful not to rush or create a big scene. Both of them had lots of experience with children, and they knew that sometimes the best way to make someone feel special is to approach them gently and naturally. Officer Mike was the first to notice them coming. He looked up and saw these two huge, famous men walking toward them, and for a second he wondered if there was some kind of problem. But when he saw their warm smiles and relaxed body language, he realized they just wanted to be part of this beautiful moment. Anna noticed them next. Her eyes went wide when she realized who was approaching them. "Robert," she whispered urgently, "look who's coming." Robert turned around and almost lost his balance in the shallow water. "Is that really John Cena and The Rock?" Anna finished, hardly believing it herself. Lucy was still floating on her back, looking up at the sky, completely unaware that her two biggest heroes in the whole world were walking toward her. She was humming a little song to herself and watching the clouds drift by. John Cena reached the water's edge first. He stopped and called out politely, "Excuse me, folks. I hope you don't mind us coming over. We've been watching from over there, and we just wanted to say how beautiful this moment is." Officer Mike smiled warmly. "Not at all. I think Lucy here would be very excited to meet you both." "Lucy?" The Rock said, stepping into the shallow water in his regular clothes, not caring at all that he was getting wet. "That's a beautiful name." The sound of these new voices, Lucy tilted her head back to see who was talking. When she saw John Cena's face looking down at her, her mouth fell open in complete shock. "John Cena?" she whispered so quietly that everyone had to lean in to hear her. "Hi there, Lucy," John Cena said with his famous warm smile. "I heard you're having your first ocean adventure today." Lucy was so surprised she forgot she was floating in water. She tried to sit up quickly, but Officer Mike gently helped her into a sitting position so she wouldn't be startled. That's when Lucy saw The Rock standing there too, his big smile beaming down at her. She looked back and forth between the two wrestlers, then at her parents, then back at the wrestlers again, like she couldn't believe this was really happening. "This isn't real," she said, shaking her head. "I'm dreaming, right?" The Rock laughed, and his laugh was just as warm and friendly as it seemed on TV. "You're not dreaming, little sister. We're really here. And we heard you're the bravest kid on this whole beach today." Me? Lucy asked, pointing to herself. Brave? Absolutely, Cena said, kneeling down in the water so he was closer to her eye level. It takes a lot of courage to try something new, especially something as big as the ocean. You're a real superhero, Lucy. Lucy giggled and splashed the water a little. I don't feel like a superhero. I feel like I'm in the best dream ever. Well, the rock said, what if we made this dream even better? Would you like us to help you explore the ocean a little more? Lucy looked at her parents with eyes so wide they seemed to take up half her face. Anna and Robert were both crying happy tears again, overwhelmed by the kindness these famous men were showing their daughter. Is it okay, Mom? Lucy asked. Anna could barely speak through her emotions. Of course, sweetheart, if you want to. Officer Mike was amazed by how naturally Cena and The Rock interacted with Lucy. They didn't treat her differently because of her disability. They talked to her like she was any other kid, which was exactly what she needed. So Lucy, the Rock said, sitting down in the shallow water next to her, what's your favorite thing about the ocean so far? Everything, Lucy said excitedly. The way it moves and the way it feels warm and the little fish that swim around my legs and the way I can float like I'm flying. Cena sat down on her other side. You know what I love about the ocean? The way it makes everyone equal. In the water, we're all just people having fun together. Can you teach me how to make bigger splashes? Lucy asked. I want to make the biggest splash in the whole ocean. Now that, the Rock said, rolling up his sleeves, is something I can definitely help you with. What happened next was pure magic. The Rock showed Lucy how to cup her hands and push the water to make bigger splashes. Cena taught her how to kick her feet to create waves of her own. Officer Mike held her steady while she practiced her new skills, and her parents laughed and took pictures of every moment. Look at me, Lucy shouted, creating the biggest splash she had ever made. I'm like a mermaid. You're better than a mermaid, Cena told her. You're Lucy, and there's nobody else in the world exactly like you. The Rock started telling Lucy stories about his own childhood and how he had been afraid of the ocean when he was little. I was scared of the waves, he admitted, but then someone showed me that the ocean wasn't scary. It was just different. And different can be beautiful. Like me? Lucy asked innocently. Exactly like you, The Rock said, his voice full of warmth. You're different, and beautiful, and special, and that's what makes you amazing. Meanwhile, other families on the beach had started to notice what was happening, but instead of crowding around or interrupting, they kept a respectful distance. Some were taking pictures from far away, but most were just watching and smiling, happy to see such kindness happening right in front of them. A little boy with his own family pointed toward the water and asked his mom, "Why is everyone being so nice to that girl?" His mom smiled and said, "Because being kind to others is one of the most important things we can do. Those men are showing her that she can do anything she sets her mind to." Back in the water, Lucy was getting more confident with each passing minute. She was splashing and laughing and asking endless questions about the ocean and about wrestling and about everything she could think of. "Do you think I could be a wrestler someday?" she asked. "I think you could be anything you want to be, Cena replied. "Wrestlers need to be strong, and you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." "But I can't walk," Lucy said matter-of-factly. "Walking isn't the only way to be strong," The Rock explained. "You're strong in your heart, in your mind, and in your spirit. That's the kind of strength that really matters." Officer Mike was amazed by how these conversations were unfolding. He had hoped to give Lucy a fun experience in the ocean, but what was happening was so much more than that. She was learning about herself and her own possibilities from people who truly understood what it meant to overcome challenges. After they had been playing in the water for about an hour, Lucy started to look a little tired again, but this time, instead of just floating quietly, she had an idea. "Can we all hold hands and float together?" she asked. It was such a simple request, but it touched everyone's hearts. Here was this little girl, who had never been in the ocean before today, asking these famous strong men to share a quiet moment with her. That sounds perfect, Anna said, wiping away more happy tears. So that's exactly what they did. Officer Mike supported Lucy while she floated on her back. John Cena held one of her hands, and The Rock held the other. Anna and Robert each held hands with the wrestlers, creating a chain of connected people floating in the gentle waves. This is the best day of my whole life, Lucy whispered, looking up at the sky. Mine too, John Cena said quietly. Definitely mine too, The Rock agreed. Officer Mike just smiled. He had started the day thinking he was going to give one little girl a chance to touch the ocean. Instead, he had somehow brought together a group of people who would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. As they floated there together, other people on the beach stopped what they were doing just to watch. There was something so peaceful and beautiful about the scene that it made everyone feel good just to see it. When they finally decided it was time to get out of the water, The Rock had a surprise for Lucy. You know what, Lucy? I think you should have something to remember this day forever. He took off a bracelet he was wearing, a simple one that said, "Believe in yourself," and gently put it on Lucy's tiny wrist. Every time you look at this, he told her, I want you to remember that you can do anything you set your mind to. You proved that today. John Cena didn't want to be left out. He took off his baseball cap and placed it on Lucy's head. And this is to remind you that you're a champion, he said. Not because you won a fight or a game, but because you had the courage to dream and the strength to make your dream come true. As Officer Mike carefully lifted Lucy out of the water and back toward her wheelchair, she looked back at the ocean. One more time. Thank you, she said to everyone. Thank you for the best day ever. But the story wasn't over yet. The Rock had one more surprise. He quietly talked to the event organizers and arranged for Lucy and her family to have season passes to the local therapy pool, where she could continue learning to swim and play in the water. John Cena made sure to get the family's contact information, so he could stay in touch and follow Lucy's progress. He also arranged for her to receive some special wrestling merchandise and tickets to the next show that came to their area. Officer Mike became a friend of the family that day. He promised to check on Lucy regularly and to help her continue her ocean adventures whenever she wanted. As the sun started to set over the beach that evening, Lucy sat in her wheelchair wearing John Cena's hat and The Rock's bracelet, surrounded by new friends who had helped make her dreams come true. I can't wait to come back to the ocean, she told her parents, and everyone knew that this was just the beginning of Lucy's amazing adventures.